How is I'm back. The last video I know I was a bit angry and stuff like that, but I hate leaving a conversation without a positive creative, you know, fallback. And just amazingly, a friend of mine here in Ireland sent me a message. I haven't seen it, but it's a video he created for his son that his son can watch in the future to tell him that things weren't always the way they are now. And I think that's a superb idea. So thanks to my friend, I'm not going to name him because I don't want to get his permission to say this, but the idea I want to say is a noble one. If you have children who are young now, create a living archive for them in the future. Write a letter, make a video and keep it on a flash drive or whatever. Put it up on the cloud. Take photographs, make an album, make a book. To tell them that the world that they live in now wasn't always how the world used to be. Although we're going to collapse the wave function, so this is actually creating our future. So you can write a letter to your children in the future, make a video, make a scrapbook, make a time vessel, what you call not a time machine is a word for a time capsule, that have pictures, photographs, to show them that when the Rona did happen, there was lots of people who knew this was a scam by governments to teach people how to become slaves and moving them towards a totalitarian society. That the history of democracy is not a story of people using their vote to create the culture, society, or nation they wanted, but the history of democracy was by powerful individuals, aristocrats, corporations, transnational globalists who bought the countries that you live in and made them run according to what they personally wanted. In the future, they'll try to write history books saying things like, people were very happy to have George Soros run the world, to have Bill Gates run the world, to have handed over their nation to the World Economic Forum, and the rainbow flag was gladly embraced by the population. Well, write a letter to the future saying this was a lie, that this was foisted upon people, and it was only weak men who stood down and let this happen. That there was a completely different story. That the world was a very different place before the rainbow flag, before the World Economic Forum, before 9/11. Now, this is guaranteeing kind of like a wave function collapse in the future for them. We'll have our own personal one. But that, I think, is a wonderful idea that this friend of mine made a video to his son in the future. Don't be despondent. Don't, it's okay to be, to realize the fucking car crash, the shit heap we're in now. But that doesn't, 90% of the work I do is the hope that someday in the future, somehow these videos will have been saved, just to show the world that during the Rona, there were many people, not just me, who were like, this is bullshit. We're being trained here to accept a totalitarian future. And that there were people who stood up against the 15-minute cities. There were, that's what they'll try and say. That it's just like the Industrial Revolution. We didn't learn about the Luddites in school. We learned about the Industrial Revolution. We didn't learn about the Luddites who said that this dependency upon the machine will be the eventual destruction of humans. Well, it took 200 years for the transhumanist stuff to come along, but it happened. The Luddites were proven right in the end. There was a professor at Cambridge called Dr. Thomas Gold, who died back in the 90s. Very interesting. He was like the last of the polymaths, and he was actually in Germany at one point, and he was held in a prisoner of war camp because the Germans suspected he was a spy. When he got back to Cambridge, he worked with people like Thomas Crick, but he became a maverick contrarian, as they call them, where he broke from the orthodoxy of science, the scientific sort of, priesthood, especially at Cambridge. And he said he was a true polymath, a true Renaissance man. He was the first person to suggest that the hairs in the ear, that inside your ears, are actually part of the amplification system, and this is how you detect uh, hearing, and that's why the hairs in the ear grow longer as you get older, because the inner ear is finding it more difficult to hear, so the hairs on the ear actually pick up the sounds. Now, he was called a quack and ludicrous and preposterous while this went on, but he was proven right. And that wasn't even his field. He even was part of the proponent that there was the universe was just something that had no beginning and had no end. Again, in the wake of the Big Bang Theory, he was considered a crackpot. But now, this kind of thing of the universe is, always has, and always will be, is now has replaced as in cosmology has replaced the Big Bang Theory, which is just a sort of a when you think about the Big Bang Theory, all it is a secular version of like Let There Be Light, the book of Genesis. And there was other things too, like he said that the dust on the moon was not volcanic ash, because there was no recent history of volcanic activity on the moon, and it was most likely to be dust blown off from the impact from craters. And that was one that they slandered him over. That he was slandered. He said, like the Sea of Tranquility and all those other flat areas on the moon, they were convinced that that was hardened volcanic flow, and he was, trashed by that, and they thought that was a rock hard surface, and it was proven it was powder, like a talcum powder type dust, blown, not blown, but it wasn't blown by wind; it was blown by solar winds across the lunar surface. And the slander I mean, even towards the end of his life, he was still quite angry about how all these great minds attacked him. But in the end, Professor Thomas Gold, on all his theories, was proven correct. Why? Because he went with noetics. He went with that insightful internal sense of feeling. And so that always tells you that the ones who go with their good feeling and then move on that are the ones who are always right in the end, because they're driven by a deep-rooted sense of knowing. Just like we are with the whole woke rainbow thing, we're not going to fall, and just like we were with the Rona, we're not going to fall for this. You're dealing with the wrong man and woman here. We're not like that. The average man and woman, yes, they're stupid enough to, the normies, they're stupid enough or easily or frightened, they're gullible enough to believe that stuff. But there's always one or two who are like, hold on a second here. And that's what we are. Now, it's very, very, these people, have you ever heard of Thomas Gold? Why he's not famous because why? He was a maverick, even though he was proven correct on so many things. Well, that's what we have to be. But we don't have to be bitter about it. What we can do is create this archive for the future that will, enshrine the truth of these ages, that there was millions and millions of people who were perfectly happy living in nation states. There were millions and millions of people who didn't believe that a guy putting on that a woman face, a man who hates women and puts on a dress and makeup is a woman himself, that didn't believe that, and so on and so on. So that's the future. If I think it's an excellent suggestion. Write a letter to your children that they can open in the future, say on his 21st birthday, or maybe something like that, or on his wedding day, or when his own child or her child is born, and say this, and just open it then. Even if you have the money, put it with a lawyer to hold on to it. And if you do put it on flash drives and that's replaced by another technology, well, then go to the other technology. Your children will be 21 and 31 before you know it. And things, we're still using, you can still find VHS players today, so don't worry about that. But the thing is, I think a capsule is the best thing. Photographs, and show that there was great joy in the world before the globalists took over. And there was, in Western society, there was great joy. Those of us who remember the 80s remember great happiness. And even though the media tried to make it sound like, in England in particular, it was all miserable with Thatcher, they deliberately made it sound more miserable than it was. In general, that was a glorious time compared to now. So there you go. Make a time capsule for your children, and for yourself, and for others, and burn the wave function collapse into reality. Okay. Ave Lucifer, and long live the horn gods.